Now, if I want to just drag that and move it around, I can move that around like this. The other thing too is that, maybe I want it playing so that it, uh, it's really up to you if you want it playing so that it fits better in this frame, then you could also scale it as well. So I can sort of do a shift and then drag to keep the constraints the same. And I can drag it some more, and then maybe I can get even more of the video playing if I rotate it. So while the Sky 2 is selected, I can go over to the properties, and you'll notice also it says that it's adjusting Sky 2 up here. It's the properties for Sky 2. And I can come down and I can find this rotation tool, right? And I want to make sure that this keyframe thing is not turned on because I don't want it to actually rotate as a keyframed thing. I just want it to start off that way. So let's just say that it's like maybe like a -45, like that. And then you can see that we can move it around, and then if I wanted to start to shift drag again a little bit more, you can see that I can get it a little bit closer to the size, and it'll update that stuff in my panel over here in the properties. Okay, and then the next thing about video is that while this is selected, I want to go ahead and say autoplay so that it will automatically start playing. And let's go ahead and save that. And then to test it, do Control Enter on Windows or Command Enter on a Mac, and you'll see that it opens up a web browser. And let me show you this up here. This address, it's 127.0.0.1. That's the loopback address for any computer. All computers have that loopback address. It's sort of like saying me, myself, I as a person. It's recursive. And then right here, there's a port number, and what's happening is Adobe's player, basically, or the application has a little built-in web application that will open up this web service on this port so that it can play stuff and approximate, run its own JavaScript and run whatever other kind of scripts it needs. So anyway, that's what it's doing, and you can see how it looks. And then you'll notice too, because we told it to be responsive, it scales, which is kind of nice. So if you wanted to actually include this inside of something else, you could always have it inside of something else if you wanted, or if you just wanted it to be default right there on the page, you could. And you'll notice that it's scaling it and also centering it vertically and horizontally like we told it to. If you decided that you didn't like the fact that it was centering it vertically, then you could always, go up here and tell it to just be right up at the top. And you see that the Sky video stopped. So one of the things that you might want to have it do is you might want to have it loop. So I'm going to close this, and we could also tell it to loop as well. And we can try it. I'm going to save that, and we can do Command Enter again. And the other thing too is that I don't have controls on this video. I can't manipulate it to make it go any faster. So that's just something that if you wanted controls in Animate, you would have to put it here, and it would actually show up sort of diagonally. If it even showed up at all, it might be hidden underneath here. So that's important just to understand. And but we could, if it's looping, it's just going to keep on playing, and eventually it'll probably fade back out and fade back in. And if you didn't want it to go to complete black or start off in complete black, you would need to go into the video and to modify the actual video, say in like Premiere or something like that. So if the video is not playing the way that you intended for it to play, then you would need to make an adjustment. So one of the things that, as we're watching this, we can think about is, what is it that we actually want to do with this interface? So there's some other choices that we could make. We could have these levels be buttons that highlight on hover, or maybe they're just colors so that it sort of encourages us to click them, and maybe as we click them, something will pop up here like words. If we have some videos, one's called Doubt, one's called Enlightenment, you click and it shows up and it changes out the video up here. That's an option. I'm going to close this. Now, one of the things that I did notice was that my video starting off black seems a little bit weird, I guess, because and also ending on black, because this area is so like brightly lit from the light of the sky. So what I did was I went back into Premiere and I changed it so that the video would, if you want to take a quick peek, starts off as white and fades in. So it doesn't start off as black. The other thing too is that one of the problems that I had, you may have noticed it just a second ago, is that whenever I had it set to loop, it seemed like it wasn't really looping because the end of that video was really, really long and it had just black in the whole end of it. So it seemed like it wasn't looping. So what I did was I had it transition out in the end too, but I can't seem to control it and make it go fast enough. So what I'll do is just temporarily turn on the controls, and then I'm going to go ahead and come over here and I'm going to just change the order so that the video's on top, and I'll do my command, I'll save it, do Command Enter, and then you see it's up on top where I can control the playback, and so I can speed it up so I can get closer to the end here and then just let it go, and you can see then how it loops. Okay, so that, I think that's pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I can close this, and I want to make sure that I send this back to the correct order, and then I'm also going to take controls off. I need to select Sky 2 over here in the elements or down here in the stage. Now it's selected and I can disable the controls. All right. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's see what we can do about adding maybe some clickable text or something. We talked about maybe making these some buttons, but let's just see what happens if we do some interesting stackable text right here. So the first thing I want to do is go over here to my text tool, and also I'm gonna choose where it says enclosed building 2, so that whenever I make a new text layer, it'll go to the right place. So if I choose my text tool and then I just click somewhere, you see it automatically starts to make something called text 3 in the stage. It also does it as an element, and what I'm going to type is, I'm going to type the word inspiration, because that's one of my videos. So I've got the word inspiration, and I can close that, and now I've got this word that's up here. If for some reason when you made this it went to somewhere like it shows a box but you can't see it, then it probably is behind the wrong thing, so you want to drag it in the right order up here. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click this and I'm going to call it inspiration. And the reason, well, and I'm going to do it actually lowercase inspiration, because that's how it's going to put it in the code. And it's kind of nice to have it in lowercase. So I'm going to name that as inspiration. You see it updates it both in the elements and stage. The other thing too is that I'm going to select that and then go over to my properties, and you can see that I can make a lot of different choices over here. So you might start out with something really small that's hard to see. I'm going to change the pixels. Like, I'm actually happy with 120, but yours might start out at something like 40, and then it'll be really tiny like that. So what you would do is come over here, change the pixel dimension to something that makes sense for your space, and then you can also change the color as well. Right here, I like white, so I'm going to leave it with white. And the other thing too is that I want to change the font. Now, if you click this drop down, I'm going to show you that you've got a lot of different choices, but you actually don't have a ton of choices. What you have are what's referred to as the safe list, because in web design, whenever you are telling a font to show up on someone's computer, that font has to actually be on the person's computer in order for it to show up, because it's not saved like as a picture file. So this is a safe list that is safe for pretty much most Windows and Mac computers currently. So I'm going to choose Arial Black because I want something like really beefy and thick. And the other thing that's kind of cool is that I can come down here and I can tell it to rotate. I'm going to tell it to be like maybe a negative 45 degrees. Let's try that, because that's how we did the video before. And now I can just move it around on the page, and you know, that might be a little bit too big, because I don't want it to stick out into the other side of the building. So maybe I'll start by making that at about, let's try 90 pixels and see how that works. And that might be a little bit better. And then it kind of, I can kind of orient it, you know, somewhere up in here. And then the thing that's kind of interesting is that I could have it sort of like it's coming out of the building, but it looks like it's not quite in line with the building's edges. So it looks like I maybe need to adjust it to, say, I don't know, negative 43 for the, let's try that and see if it lines up any better. And it looks like that's a little bit too much, so let's try negative 44. And it looks like that might be kind of the magic spot, and I think it is. All right, so if we wanted the word inspiration right there, we could start out with it here, and then we could also even move it up one if we wanted to. And let's say that we want it to start at somewhere about right here. And if you wanted to make it more visible, you could put a drop shadow. So if I come down here, I can click on the little light switch to turn on a drop shadow. And I'm going to make my, let's do it like maybe 15 pixels on the X and Y axis. And we're going to blur it maybe 15 pixels so it's not so heavy. And that's a little bit better, and you can start to see it a lot more clearly. Okay, so now we've got that word, and I think that I'm okay with that. And what we can do too is that the other movie that I was going to use is something called Doubt. And I haven't loaded those movies yet, but let's just say that I already know what they are. So I've got Inspiration and I've got Doubt. Well, if I want both of those to be apparent right up front, then what I can do, instead of having to recreate that whole thing, I can actually just select this, and in the timeline, or excuse me, in Elements, I can right click and I can say duplicate, and it'll make a copy of Inspiration. And so I'm going to actually rename the copy to the word Doubt, and it will also update that in the stage for me. And now I can actually move that down, let's say maybe to about here, and I'm going to double click that, and it pops up with the little text box, and so I can change that to the word Doubt here. All right, and then it actually moved that for me, and so I want to move it back to where I'd like for it to actually start. And then you could think about starting it like maybe, right inside here, or even, further down or something like that. And then where it says Inspiration, if you need to make it smaller, you can. But where it says Doubt, I think I actually want that to be bigger. Let's try that at about 120. And we have to sort of move it around to get it where we want it. And then you got this, you sort of have this like feeling of perspective. And if you wanted the word inspiration to fit inside, you could do that. It might end up being too small. So then like what I'd be faced with is thinking about, well, do I want it based on the center of these two lines, or do I want it based on the edge of those two lines? And if I want it based on the edge of those two lines, then what I could do is, come in here and maybe start Doubt right up on the edge, like somewhere in there, and then the word inspiration, I could make a little bit smaller. Let's say maybe, let's do it at about 80 pixels, and then you start to get that sense of perspective and scale, and so that's like it's coming out of the building. All right, so you could do something like that and mess around with it some more. In fact, give me just a second and I'll get it to where I think I actually want it. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. And it looks like it's sort of coming right out of the corners of here. And these are in line vertically. So it feels like the perspective is pretty on target. And I also changed the word inspiration to 85 pixels. So now that we have these things in place, we could make them so that they're clickable, and that they, when clicked or something, that they invoke video. So, but first, in order for that to happen, we actually have to import the video. So I'm going to move to the next demonstration. We're going to import some video, and I'm going to show you how you can create poster frames for video and do stuff with that, and then also how you can start to add script to make these things interactive.